Welcome to Volume and Vision. Take a moment and think about this. Have you ever picked up your phone just to check the time, only to realize that 20 minutes disappeared while you were scrolling through videos you never intended to watch? Have you ever sat down with a clear goal, to study, to work, to read, or to build something meaningful, only to find yourself distracted by messages, notifications, random thoughts, or even your own emotions? If your answer is yes, you're not alone. Most people believe that the biggest enemy of success is laziness. They think they fail because they don't have enough motivation or enough discipline. But what if that's not the real problem? What if the real enemy isn't laziness at all? What if it's something much more subtle, something that quietly steals your attention every single day without asking for permission? Imagine this. There are two people with the same intelligence, the same education, and the same opportunities. 5 years later, one has built a successful career, learned valuable skills, maintained meaningful relationships, and enjoys a healthy, balanced life. The other feels constantly busy but strangely unfulfilled. Every day seems packed with activity, yet almost nothing important gets done. The difference isn't talent, it isn't luck, it isn't even how hard they work. The difference is where their attention goes. In today's world, attention has become one of the most valuable resources a human being possesses. Companies compete for it, apps are designed to capture it, social media platforms invest billions of dollars to keep it for just a few more seconds. Every notification, every headline, every recommendation is competing for a small piece of your mind. And here's the frightening part. Most of us don't even realize it's happening. We believe we're making conscious choices, but often we're simply reacting. One notification leads to another. One quick search becomes an hour-long rabbit hole. One short break turns into an entire evening lost. Little by little, distraction becomes a lifestyle. But here's the good news. Attention is trainable, focus is a skill, and living without constant distraction isn't something you're born with, it's something you learn. In this video, we're going to explore the powerful ideas from Indistractable by Nir Eyal. This isn't just another productivity book filled with motivational quotes or unrealistic routines. Instead, it challenges many of the beliefs we've held for years about focus, discipline, and self-control. You might discover that the reasons you lose focus have very little to do with your phone. In fact, your biggest distraction may already be inside your own mind. So if you've ever struggled to finish a book, stay consistent at the gym, concentrate while studying, complete an important project, or simply spend quality time with your loved ones without checking your phone every few minutes, this video is for you. By the end, you'll understand why distraction happens, how it silently controls our lives, and most importantly, how you can take back control of your attention. Let's begin. Most people define distraction as anything that interrupts their work. But the book introduces a much deeper idea. To understand distraction, we first need to understand its opposite. Surprisingly, the opposite of distraction isn't focus. The opposite is traction. Think about that for a moment. The word, traction, comes from the idea of being pulled towards something. Whenever your actions move you closer to the person you want to become or the life you truly value, you're experiencing traction. Distraction is simply the opposite. It's anything that pulls you away from those values and goals. Notice something important. Here, checking your phone isn't automatically a distraction. Watching a movie isn't automatically a distraction. Playing games isn't automatically a distraction. Even relaxing isn't automatically a distraction. If you've intentionally decided to spend an hour watching a movie with your family because you value quality time together, that's traction. You chose it deliberately. But if you plan to finish an important assignment and somehow ended up watching random videos for 2 hours without even realizing it, that's distraction. The activity isn't the problem. The intention behind it is. This changes everything. Many people spend their lives trying to eliminate enjoyable activities, believing that entertainment is the enemy of success. They delete apps, uninstall games, and promise themselves they'll never waste time again. A few days later, everything comes back. Why? Because they treated the symptom instead of the cause. Imagine a person trying to stop eating unhealthy food by simply throwing away every snack in the house. It might work for a day or two, but unless they understand why they constantly crave unhealthy food, they'll eventually buy more. The same thing happens with distractions. If you don't understand why your brain keeps searching for them, removing one distraction simply creates room for another. You might stop using Instagram, only to start checking email every 5 minutes. You stop watching YouTube and suddenly find yourself endlessly organizing your desk. You stop scrolling social media but spend hours reading news articles that don't affect your life. The distraction changes, the habit remains. So the real question isn't, how do I stop using my phone? The real question is, why do I keep reaching for my phone in the first place? This is where the book introduces one of its most powerful ideas. Most distractions begin with something called an internal trigger. An internal trigger is an uncomfortable feeling that pushes you to escape the present moment. It could be boredom, stress, loneliness, uncertainty, fear, anxiety, self-doubt, frustration. These emotions are completely normal. Every human being experiences them. The problem begins when we immediately try to escape them instead of understanding them. Think about your own day. You're studying, and suddenly the chapter becomes difficult. Almost instantly, you feel a little uncomfortable. Before you even notice what's happening, your hand reaches for your phone. You're working on a challenging project. It feels mentally exhausting. Without thinking, you open another browser tab. You're sitting alone for a few quiet minutes. Instead of enjoying the silence, you instinctively start scrolling through social media. Was the phone the real cause? Not really. The phone simply offered an easy escape from discomfort. Our brains naturally seek pleasure and avoid pain. This tendency helped humans survive for thousands of years. But in today's world, where instant entertainment is always available, that survival mechanism often works against us. The moment life feels uncomfortable, endless distractions are waiting to rescue us. The problem is that every escape teaches the brain the same lesson. Feeling uncomfortable, run away. Feeling bored, find stimulation. Feeling stressed, escape immediately. Over time, the brain becomes trained to avoid even the smallest amount of discomfort. And unfortunately, almost every meaningful achievement requires exactly the opposite. Learning a new language is uncomfortable. Building a business is uncomfortable. Preparing for competitive exams is uncomfortable. Writing a book is uncomfortable. Starting a fitness journey is uncomfortable. Improving relationships sometimes requires uncomfortable conversations. Growth and discomfort have always walked together. If we spend our lives escaping discomfort, we unknowingly escape growth itself. So instead of asking, how do I eliminate distractions? Perhaps a better question is, how do I become comfortable being uncomfortable? That's where real transformation begins. The next time you notice yourself reaching for your phone without thinking, don't judge yourself. Don't call yourself lazy. Don't assume you lack discipline. Instead, pause for just a few seconds and ask yourself one simple question. What am I feeling right now? Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe you're afraid of failing. Maybe you're bored because the task isn't immediately rewarding. Or maybe you're simply tired. That tiny moment of awareness changes everything. Because once you recognize the emotion driving your behavior, you've created a gap between the trigger and your response. And in that small gap lies the beginning of freedom. Most people never notice that gap. They react automatically. But people who learn to notice it slowly begin taking back control of their attention, one decision at a time. That realization is the foundation upon which everything else in this book is built. Once you understand that distraction starts long before you pick up your phone, you're finally ready to build a life where your choices are guided by your values, not by your impulses. And that is exactly where the next step of the journey begins. Once you begin paying attention to those internal triggers, something surprising happens. You start realizing that distractions aren't random. They follow patterns. Maybe every afternoon, right after lunch, your energy drops and you instinctively start checking social media. Perhaps every time you receive criticism, even if it's constructive, you suddenly feel the urge to watch videos or play games. Maybe every Sunday evening, when you think about the responsibilities waiting for you on Monday, you find yourself procrastinating instead of preparing. These moments may seem unrelated, but they're connected by one simple truth: your mind is trying to avoid discomfort. The first step toward becoming indistractable is awareness. The second step is replacing unconscious reactions with intentional choices. That brings us back to the idea of traction. Remember, traction isn't about working every second of the day. It's about making sure your actions are moving like you actually want. Many people misunderstand productivity. They believe being productive means staying busy from morning until night. Their calendars are full, their to-do lists are endless, and they barely have time to breathe. Yet despite being busy, they often feel as though they're standing still. Why? Because movement isn't the same as progress. Imagine boarding a train that travels at 300 kilometers per hour. It's incredibly fast, but if it's heading in the wrong direction, speed only takes you farther away from where you want to go. Life works the same way. Being busy without intention is simply fast distraction. True productivity begins by deciding what actually matters. This sounds obvious, but very few people ever pause long enough to answer that question honestly. If someone asked you right now, what are the 5 most important things in your life? What would you say? Family, health, career, education, faith, creativity, financial freedom, personal growth. Most people can answer that question within a minute. Now here's a more difficult question. Does your calendar reflect those priorities? If someone secretly observed your daily routine for an entire month without hearing your words, what would they conclude as most important to you? Would they see hours invested in learning, creating, exercising, connecting with loved ones, and improving yourself? Or would they mostly see endless scrolling, constant interruptions, and reacting to whatever appears on your screen? Your calendar tells the truth more honestly than your intentions. Many of us say our health matters, but exercise only happens when there's extra time. We say family comes first, yet we spend dinner looking at notifications instead of having conversations. We claim learning is important, but somehow never find 30 uninterrupted minutes to read a book. The problem isn't that we don't know what's important. The problem is that we never schedule what matters. We assume we'll make time later. Later rarely arrives. This is why the book emphasizes something incredibly practical. If you don't plan your time, someone else will. Think about your average day. You wake up and check your phone. One notification leads to another. An email reminds you about something urgent. A message interrupts your concentration. A random headline grabs your curiosity. Suddenly the day is no longer yours. You're simply responding. By evening, you're exhausted. Not because you accomplished meaningful work, but because your attention was pulled in dozens of different directions. Living reactively feels busy, but it slowly steals your sense of control. Instead of deciding how to spend your attention, you allow everyone else to decide for you. That's why intentional scheduling isn't about creating a rigid prison for yourself. It's about protecting what matters before distractions have a chance to take over. Imagine 2 students preparing for an important examination. The first student simply hopes to study whenever motivation appears. The second student blocks out specific hours every day dedicated solely to studying. Both students are equally intelligent. Who is more likely to succeed? Probably the second one, not because they possess greater discipline, but because they remove the need to constantly make decisions. Their schedule already made the decision. Every choice we make throughout the day consumes a small amount of mental energy. Psychologists often refer to this as decision fatigue. The more unnecessary decisions we make, the harder it becomes to make good ones later. If every morning you have to ask yourself, should I study now or later? You're already creating an opportunity for distraction. But if your calendar already says, from 8 until 10, this is study time, the decision has already been made. Your only job is to show up. This simple shift reduces mental resistance dramatically. However, there's another mistake people often make. They schedule only work. Their calendar becomes a long list of responsibilities with no room for rest, hobbies, entertainment, or relationships. Eventually, they burn out. Ironically, burnout creates even more distractions. The brain naturally rebels against endless pressure. That's why planning enjoyable activities is just as important as planning productive ones. This may sound strange at first. Should relaxation really be scheduled? Absolutely. Because intentional relaxation is very different from mindless escape. Suppose you decide that every Saturday evening you'll watch a movie with your family, cook together, or meet close friends. That isn't wasting time. It's an intentional investment in relationships. Now imagine spending that same evening absent-mindedly scrolling through short videos for 3 hours without remembering what you even watched. The amount of time may be identical, The experience is completely different. One choice leaves you feeling refreshed and connected. The other often leaves you feeling guilty and strangely empty. The lesson is simple. Entertainment isn't the enemy. Unintentional living is. A balanced life includes work, learning, health, relationships, hobbies, and rest. Ignoring any one of these areas eventually creates dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction often becomes another internal trigger for distraction. Let's consider another example. Imagine a young architect named Maya. She genuinely loves designing buildings, but lately she can't seem to concentrate. Every few minutes she checks her messages. She opens social media without thinking. She jumps between tasks all day. One evening she decides to observe herself instead of criticizing herself. She notices something surprising. Every time she begins working on a complex design, she feels uncertain. What if this idea isn't good enough? What if the client rejects it? Those thoughts create anxiety. Checking her phone temporarily relieves that anxiety. For a few moments, she doesn't have to think about failure. The distraction wasn't caused by the phone. It was caused by fear disguised as procrastination. Once Maya recognized that pattern, she made a small change. Instead of forcing herself to work for hours, she committed to just 15 focused minutes. No pressure, no expectation of perfection, just 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes often became 30. 30 became an hour became a productive morning. Progress didn't begin because she became more disciplined overnight. It began because she lowered the emotional barrier to starting. This reveals another important truth. The hardest part of meaningful work is rarely doing it. The hardest part is beginning. Our minds exaggerate effort before we start. A 5-page report feels impossible until you've written the first paragraph. A workout feels exhausting until you've completed the first few exercises. A difficult chapter feels overwhelming until you've read the first page. Action creates momentum. Waiting for motivation usually doesn't. Successful people don't always feel motivated. They've simply learned how to begin before motivation arrives. That's a lesson worth remembering. Instead of asking yourself, "Do I feel like doing this?" ask a different question. Can I work on this for just 10 minutes? Most of the time, the answer is yes. And those 10 minutes are often enough to overcome the resistance your brain created. As you continue practicing intentional living, something remarkable starts happening. Your schedule no longer feels like a list of restrictions. It becomes a reflection of your values. Your mornings begin with purpose instead of panic. Your evenings end with satisfaction instead of regret. You stop measuring your day by how busy you were and start measuring it by how closely your actions matched the life you want to build. And once you've learned to align your time with your priorities, you're ready for the next challenge. Because even with the perfect schedule, even with clear goals and strong intentions, there will still be moments when temptation appears out of nowhere. The question is no longer whether distractions exist. The question is whether you're prepared before they arrive. That preparation becomes one of the most powerful strategies in the entire journey toward becoming truly indistractable. Even with the best intentions, every person eventually faces the same moment. You're sitting at your desk, fully prepared to focus. Your schedule is clear, your workspace is organized, your goals are written down. You've promised yourself that this time will be different. Then, almost out of nowhere, a thought appears. Maybe I should just check my phone for a second. Asterisk. Or perhaps it's something even more convincing. I've been working hard. I deserve a short break. Asterisk. I'll just reply to one message. Asterisk. One quick video won't hurt. Asterisk. These thoughts sound harmless because they rarely arrive as distractions. They arrive disguised as reasonable decisions. This is why relying on willpower alone is such a dangerous strategy. Most people imagine discipline as constantly saying no to temptation. They believe mentally strong people fight every distraction with incredible self-control. But the truth is very different. People who stay focused don't usually win because they have stronger willpower. They win because they make fewer decisions in the first place. Imagine walking through a bakery every single morning while trying to avoid eating sweets. The smell of fresh bread fills the air, colorful desserts sit behind the glass, and every display is designed to catch your attention. Now imagine taking a different route that doesn't pass the bakery at all. Which option requires more self-control? Obviously, avoiding temptation entirely. This simple idea lies at the heart of one of the book's most practical lessons. Instead of constantly resisting distractions, make distractions harder to reach. The less effort required to become distracted, the more likely you'll do it. Likewise, the more effort required, the less attractive the distraction becomes. Think about your smartphone for a moment. If it's lying directly beside your notebook while you're studying, checking it requires almost no effort. Your brain doesn't even have to think. But what if the phone is charging in another room? Now checking it requires standing up, walking across the house, unlocking it, and then coming back. That tiny amount of extra effort changes everything. It sounds almost too simple to matter. Yet human behavior is surprisingly sensitive to friction. We're naturally drawn toward convenience. Researchers have repeatedly observed this pattern in everyday life. People are more likely to choose whatever is easiest, even when they know another option is better for them. The same principle works in reverse. If you make unwanted habits slightly more difficult, they become much less frequent. Imagine someone named Daniel who works from home as a graphic designer. Every morning he opens his laptop intending to begin work immediately. Within minutes, however, he's checking news websites, replying to unnecessary emails, watching random videos, and reading comments that have nothing to do with his projects. By lunchtime, he feels busy but hasn't actually designed anything meaningful. At first, Daniel blames himself. I have no discipline. I'm terrible at focusing. I'll try harder tomorrow. Tomorrow arrives. Nothing changes. One day, instead of criticizing himself, Daniel decides to redesign his environment. He removes social media bookmarks from his browser. He signs out of entertainment websites so logging in requires extra effort. He installs a website blocker during work hours. His phone stays in another room until lunch. He keeps only the programs needed for today's work open. Everything else remains closed. The next morning feels different. The distractions still exist, but now they aren't immediately available. Every distraction demands a conscious decision. That pause gives Daniel enough time to ask himself an important question. Is this helping me move toward my goal? Sometimes the answer is yes. Most of the time, it isn't. Notice something important. Daniel didn't become a different person overnight. He simply changed the environment around him. Too often, we expect ourselves to succeed inside environments specifically designed to make us fail. Social media platforms are engineered to keep you scrolling. Streaming services automatically play the next episode. Shopping websites recommend products you'll probably like. News apps constantly refresh with breaking stories. None of these systems were built to protect your attention. They were built to capture it. Expecting yourself to resist every one of these temptations forever is unrealistic. Instead of fighting your environment every day, build an environment that quietly supports your goals. This principle extends far beyond technology. Think about your workspace. A cluttered desk often creates a cluttered mind. Every unnecessary object competes for a tiny piece of your attention. Old papers, random notebooks, half-finished projects, loose cables, empty coffee cups, each one silently reminds your brain of unfinished tasks. By contrast, a clean workspace sends a different message. Right now, there's only one thing that deserves my attention. This doesn't mean your desk must look perfect. It simply means your environment should make your desired behavior easier. Small environmental changes often produce surprisingly large results. A bottle of water on your desk encourages hydration. A book placed beside your bed encourages reading. Running shoes kept near the front door encourage exercise. Healthy food placed at eye level encourages better eating habits. The easier something becomes, the more consistently you'll do it. Now let's look at another powerful idea. Not every distraction comes from technology. Some come from people. A friend calls unexpectedly. A coworker drops by for just a minute. Family members interrupt during important work. Messages arrive all day long. Most people respond immediately because they don't want to appear rude. But constantly being available has a hidden cost. Every interruption leaves a mental residue. Imagine you're deeply focused on solving a difficult problem. Someone interrupts for 30 seconds. After the conversation ends, your body may return to your chair immediately, but your mind often doesn't. Part of your attention stays with the interruption. Researchers sometimes describe this as attention residue. the leftover mental energy still attached to the previous task. That residue makes deep concentration much harder. This is why boundaries matter. Boundaries aren't walls that push people away. They're agreements that protect what matters. Suppose you're preparing for one of the biggest examinations of your life. You decide that every evening between 6 and 8 o'clock will be uninterrupted study time. Instead of disappearing without explanation, you simply tell your family and close friends. During these 2 hours, I'll be fully focused. If something is urgent, please let me know immediately. Otherwise, I'll happily respond afterward. Most reasonable people will respect that. In fact, clear communication often strengthens relationships because expectations become clear. The same principle applies in professional life. You don't have to answer every email the moment it arrives. You don't need to reply to every message within 30 seconds. Immediate responses create the illusion of productivity while quietly destroying real productivity. Deep work requires uninterrupted time. Protecting that time isn't selfish. It's responsible. There's another kind of agreement that can dramatically increase focus. This agreement isn't made with other people. It's made with yourself. Imagine promising yourself that if you skip your planned workout without a genuine reason, you'll donate money to a cause you don't particularly support. Or perhaps you'll give a close friend permission to hold you accountable. Suddenly, skipping becomes much less attractive. This strategy works because human beings naturally try harder to avoid losses than to achieve equivalent gains. We dislike losing something we've already committed far more than we enjoy gaining something new. That's why commitment devices can be incredibly effective. They create consequences before temptation appears. Instead of depending entirely on motivation, you build systems that support your future self. Another powerful commitment is identity. Think about how often people describe themselves. I'm terrible at waking up early. I'm easily distracted. I've never been disciplined. I'm just not productive. These sentences may sound harmless, but over time they become part of your identity. And people naturally behave in ways that match how they see themselves. Now imagine replacing those statements with something different. I'm someone who protects my attention. I'm becoming more focused every day. I'm the kind of person who finishes what I start. Notice the difference. You're not pretending to be perfect. You're choosing an identity that encourages better actions. Every small decision becomes evidence supporting that identity. When you read instead of scrolling, you're proving it. When you finish your planned work before opening social media, you're proving it again. When you return to your task after a distraction instead of giving up completely, you're proving it once more. Identity isn't built by one dramatic moment. It's built through hundreds of small choices repeated consistently. Eventually, focusing no longer feels like something you force yourself to do. It becomes part of who you are. But even after creating better environments, stronger boundaries, helpful commitments, and a healthier identity, one challenge still remains. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Some days you'll feel exhausted. Some days you'll fail. Some days distractions will win despite your best efforts. And surprisingly, those difficult days may determine your future far more than your successful ones. Because becoming indistractable isn't about never losing focus. It's about what you choose to do after you lose it. That lesson may be the most important one of all, and it's where our journey continues. There is one mistake that almost everyone makes when trying to become more focused. They believe success means never getting distracted. So the moment they slip, even once, they become disappointed with themselves. Maybe they planned to study for 3 hours but spent 30 minutes scrolling through social media. Maybe they promised to exercise every morning but skipped one workout. Maybe they committed to reading every night but missed several days in a row. Instead of seeing these moments as temporary setbacks, they treat them as proof that they've failed. And that's where the real damage begins. Because distraction itself rarely destroys progress. What destroys progress is the story we tell ourselves after the distraction. Think about it. Imagine two friends, Ethan and Noah, who both decide to wake up early every morning to work on their personal goals before going to work. For the first 2 weeks, everything goes well. Then one rainy morning, both of them oversleep. Ethan wakes up frustrated. I knew this wouldn't last. I'm just not disciplined. I always quit. By the end of the day, he convinces himself that the challenge is over. The next morning he sleeps in again. Within a week, his new habit has completely disappeared. Noah wakes up to the same mistake. He's do. But instead of attacking himself, he asks a different question. What caused this? After thinking about it, he realizes he stayed up much later than usual the previous night because he spent hours watching videos instead of sleeping. The problem wasn't waking up. The problem started the night before. So rather than giving up, he adjusts his evening routine. He decides to stop using his phone after 10 o'clock and places it on the other side of the room before going to bed. The next morning, he wakes up on time again. Both people experienced exactly the same setback. One treated it as evidence of failure. The other treated it as useful information. Months later, their lives looked completely different. The difference wasn't talent. It wasn't motivation. It was the meaning they attached to one bad day. This is one of the most valuable lessons you can learn, not only from this book, but from life itself. Progress is never perfectly straight. It looks more like climbing a mountain. Some days you'll move quickly. Some days you'll barely make any progress. Occasionally, you'll even slide backward. But as long as you continue climbing, you're still moving toward the summit. Too many people quit because they expect improvement to feel smooth. Reality is much messier. Learning a language involves forgetting words. Building a business involves failed ideas. Improving your fitness includes difficult days when your body refuses to cooperate. Developing focus includes moments of distraction. Mistakes are not interruptions to growth. They are part of growth. Unfortunately, our minds often convince us otherwise. This is known as the all or nothing mindset. It whispers things like, I already wasted half an hour, so today is ruined. Asterisk, I missed one workout, so my routine is broken. Asterisk, I ate one unhealthy meal, so I might as well forget the diet. Asterisk, I got distracted once, so I clearly don't have self-control. Asterisk, these thoughts feel logical in the moment, but they're completely false. Imagine dropping your phone on the floor. Would you decide to smash it with a hammer because it already has one crack? Of course not. Yet that's exactly what we do with our habits. One mistake becomes permission to make 10 more. The better response is surprisingly simple. Treat every moment as a fresh beginning. You don't need Monday. You don't need next month. You don't even need tomorrow. The next decision is all that matters. If you were distracted for 20 minutes, your next choice can still be productive. If you skipped your morning routine, your afternoon can still be meaningful. If yesterday went badly, today doesn't have to. Life is built one decision at a time, not one perfect streak at a time. This way of thinking is closely connected to something psychologists call a growth mindset. A growth mindset doesn't assume that abilities are fixed. Instead, it believes that skills improve through practice, reflection, and consistent effort. People with a fixed mindset often think, I'm just not good at concentrating. Asterisk, some people are naturally disciplined. I'm not one of them. Asterisk, I've always been a procrastinator. Asterisk, these beliefs quietly become self-fulfilling. Because if you believe nothing can change, why would you keep trying? A growth mindset asks different questions. What can I learn from this? Asterisk, which part of my system failed? Asterisk, what small adjustment can I make next time? Asterisk, notice how these questions focus on improvement rather than blame. Blame keeps you stuck. Curiosity moves you forward. Imagine a scientist running an experiment. The first attempt doesn't produce the expected result. Does the scientist declare themselves a failure? No. They collect data. They adjust the variables. They test again. Eventually, they discover what works. Successful people often treat their lives the same way. They become curious observers of their own behavior. Instead of saying, why am I so lazy? Asterisk, they ask, what made this task difficult today? Asterisk, instead of saying, I have no discipline, they asked, what can I change in my environment tomorrow? Asterisk, that tiny shift transforms frustration into learning. Let's imagine another story. Sophia dreams of becoming a novelist. She promises herself that she'll write 1,000 words every day. The first week goes perfectly. During the second week, work becomes stressful. One evening she writes only 200 words. The next day she writes nothing at all. For a moment, she feels like giving up. Then she remembers an important principle. Consistency matters more than perfection. Instead of forcing herself to write another 1,000 words immediately, she makes one simple commitment. Just one paragraph. That's all. One paragraph feels almost too easy. She sits down and writes it. After finishing, she feels inspired to continue. 30 minutes later, she has written over 800 words. Not because she forced herself, because she removed the pressure of perfection. This teaches us another important truth. Big goals often become overwhelming because we focus too much on the destination. We imagine the entire mountain instead of the next step. The human brain handles small challenges much better than enormous ones. Suppose someone tells you to read 50 books this year. It sounds intimidating. Now imagine they simply ask you to read 10 pages today. That feels manageable, yet those 10 pages, repeated consistently, eventually become 50 books. Great achievements are rarely the result of one extraordinary effort. They're usually the result of ordinary actions repeated long enough. The same is true for becoming indistractable. You don't suddenly wake up one morning with perfect focus. You build it. One uninterrupted study session, one intentional conversation, one workout, one decision to put your phone away, one evening spent reading instead of endlessly scrolling. Each choice seems insignificant on its own. Together, they reshape your identity. Over time, something remarkable happens. The activities that once required tremendous effort begin feeling natural. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. You no longer panic when distractions appear. You recognize them. You understand them. You know they don't define you. They're simply part of being human. And every time you return your attention to what truly matters, you're strengthening a mental muscle that becomes more reliable with every repetition. Eventually, you stop asking, "How do I avoid every distraction?" Instead, you begin asking, "How quickly can I return to what matters?" That single question changes everything. Because perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. And as your mindset begins to change, you'll notice something unexpected. The greatest reward of becoming indistractable isn't getting more work done. It's gaining something far more valuable. The feeling that your life is finally being lived on your own terms, not according to your impulses, not according to algorithms, and not according to other people's demands. That realization leads us to the final and perhaps most meaningful lesson of this journey: what it truly means to reclaim ownership of your attention, your time, and ultimately, your life. The truth is, becoming indistractable isn't about creating a life with zero distractions. That kind of life doesn't exist. No matter how organized you are, no matter how disciplined you become, life will always find ways to interrupt your plans. Your phone will ring during an important task. Unexpected problems will appear. People will need your attention. Your motivation will rise and fall. Some mornings you'll wake up energized, ready to conquer the day. On other mornings, even getting out of bed will feel like a challenge. The goal isn't to eliminate these moments. The goal is to make sure they don't control the direction of your life. Imagine you're the captain of a ship crossing a vast ocean. You can't control the wind. You can't stop the waves. You can't predict every storm. But you can control the sail. You can adjust your direction. You can decide whether temporary turbulence changes your destination. Life works the same way. Distractions are life-changing weather conditions. They may slow you down, force you to adjust your course, or even make you pause for a while. But they don't have to determine where you eventually arrive. The problem is that many people spend their entire lives reacting to the weather instead of steering the ship. Every notification changes their focus. Every opinion changes their confidence. Every trend changes their priorities. Slowly, they stop living according to their own values and begin living according to whatever demands their attention the loudest. We have more information than any generation before us, yet less clarity. We have more ways to connect, yet many people feel lonelier than ever. We have countless tools designed to save time, yet somehow we always seem to have less of it. The issue isn't technology itself. Technology is simply a tool. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The hammer isn't good or bad. What matters is how it's used. Your phone can help you learn a new language, connect with family across the world, build a business, read thousands of books, or master almost any skill imaginable. The same phone can also consume hours every single day without adding anything meaningful to your life. The difference isn't the device. The difference is whether you're using it automatically. This brings us to one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. Who is in control, not just of your phone, not just of your schedule, but of your attention? Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. If your attention is constantly scattered, your days begin to feel scattered. If your attention is invested in meaningful work, meaningful relationships, and continuous learning, your life gradually reflects those choices. Attention is the currency with which we purchase our future. Every hour spent learning a valuable skill compounds over time. Every conversation with someone you love strengthens that relationship. Every workout improves your health. Every page you read expands your understanding. Every focused hour invested today becomes part of the person you'll become tomorrow. The opposite is also true. Every hour lost to mindless distraction is an hour that can never be recovered. Time is the one resource that treats everyone equally. The richest person in the world and the poorest person in the world both receive 24 hours each day. The difference lies in how those hours are invested. Think about someone planting a tree. The person doesn't see dramatic results after one day, or 1 week, even after several months. The tree may still seem small, but underneath the ground, something extraordinary is happening. The roots are growing deeper, slowly, silently, almost invisibly. One day the growth becomes impossible to ignore. The tree stands taller, stronger, and more resilient than anyone expected. Your habits work exactly the same way. Most of the results you want are invisible in the beginning. You won't become healthier after one workout. You won't become fluent after one language lesson. You won't become financially successful after reading one business book. You won't become indistractable after one productive day. But each small action strengthens invisible roots. Eventually, those roots support extraordinary growth. This is why patience matters. Our culture celebrates instant success, overnight fame, quick money, 30-day transformations. But real change rarely happens that way. The strongest foundations are built gradually. Think about learning to play a musical instrument. The first few weeks often feel frustrating. Your fingers don't cooperate. You make mistakes constantly. Progress seems painfully slow. Then one day, almost without noticing when it happened, you're playing songs that once seemed impossible. The improvement wasn't sudden. It was simply too gradual to notice day by day. The same is true for focus. One uninterrupted hour may not change your life. Neither will two. But hundreds of focused hours accumulated over months and years create expertise that few people ever achieve. Mastery is simply sustained attention over a long period of time. Unfortunately, many people never experience this because they keep restarting. Every Monday they promise a new beginning. Every month they download another productivity app. Every year they buy another planner. Yet the cycle repeats because they're searching for better tools instead of building better habits. No app can replace intention. No calendar can create purpose. No productivity technique can substitute for knowing what truly matters to you. That's why becoming indistractable isn't ultimately about productivity. It's about living deliberately. Imagine reaching the end of your life and looking back. Will you remember the hundreds of hours spent refreshing social media? Will you treasure the endless arguments in online comment sections? Will you proudly think about the countless notifications you answered immediately? Probably not. You'll remember the conversations that changed your perspective, the books that shaped your thinking, the work you created, the people you loved, the challenges that helped you grow, the moments when you were fully present. Presence is becoming increasingly rare. Many people sit in the same room while looking at different screens. Parents play with children while secretly checking messages. Friends meet for dinner but spend half the evening looking at their phones. Couples travel to beautiful places only to experience them through a camera lens. Physically together, mentally somewhere else. Attention isn't only about productivity. It's also about connection. The greatest gift you can give another person isn't expensive presents or impressive words. It's your complete attention. When someone feels truly heard, they feel valued. When you listen without constantly checking your phone, you communicate something powerful. You matter. Likewise, when you give your full attention to your own dreams, you're sending yourself the same message. My future matters. Every time you choose focus over distraction, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. One vote won't decide the outcome. Neither will two, but thousands of small votes eventually shape your identity. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, describes identity as something built through repeated actions, and this idea beautifully complements what we've explored throughout this journey. You don't become focused because you declare yourself focused. You become focused because you repeatedly practice focusing. You don't become disciplined because motivation suddenly appears. You become disciplined because your daily actions slowly transform your self-image. This means your future isn't determined by one dramatic decision. It's determined by ordinary moments that seem too small to matter. The decision to read 10 pages instead of scrolling. The decision to go for a walk instead of lying on the couch. The decision to finish one more paragraph. The decision to silence notifications during dinner. The decision to be fully present during a conversation. None of these choices will make headlines. But together, they quietly shape an extraordinary life. As we come to the end of this journey, remember one simple idea. You don't need to become a completely different person tomorrow. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need endless motivation. You simply need to become a little more intentional than you were yesterday. Notice your internal triggers. Align your time with your values. Design an environment that supports your goals. Create commitments that protect your future self. Treat setbacks as lessons instead of failures. And above all, remember that your attention is one of the most valuable things you own. Guard it carefully. Spend it wisely, because the quality of your attention ultimately becomes the quality of your life. If you found these insights valuable and want to explore more life-changing books that can help you think better, work smarter, and live with greater purpose, make sure to subscribe to Volume and Vision. Every week, we bring you carefully crafted book summaries and timeless ideas that can transform the way you see the world, one book at a time. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Until our next journey together, keep learning, keep growing, stay curious, and most importantly, choose your attention before the world chooses it for you.